When most people look back upon recent Pixar, they feel as it's not the same as they once were during the golden age. Not that the movies are trash unless you do think that way, but how it's not the same universally enjoyable quality. At least that's what I thought about this era that Disney mistakenly butchered during Pixar's reputation after COVID releasing their movies on Disney Plus like an original piece of content, where many people just didn't feel like it was best to watch them again in theaters when the time films like Lightyear rolled around. That its true potential was hidden because of the sheltered strategy that was going on even when times seemed much better for films to show back in theaters and the way people consume movies. And of course, judging by the internet's reaction upon many things of how things work these days. This was a major case with Turning Red when it was released in 2022 just before Lightyear was only on Disney Plus, where our opinions about the movie shifted in this direction. But looking back on my own simple stupid opinions about things, came the time to truly appreciate what films like Turning Red did do for Pixar. Something that I would call now a cringy masterpiece for the story it was trying to tell that relates to so many. The reason I say that is because it is a good movie with things I don't particularly care for or like that I find are really cringy, but how that was the purpose of what they were trying to go for. That it made sense for what the film was communicating in such a unique way that continues what Pixar truly is, how they attach themselves to real experiences, which is something I really appreciate about the unique style this movie was going for compared to other films that try to aim for more stylish realism, being more cartoonish while having experiences that are literally real, things in the film that would have happened in real life, applying the director's own experience and those who actually worked on the film. Where speaking about director Do-Mei Shi, is the fact that she is the one who also directed Bao, the best Pixar short in my opinion that of course takes place in the same setting as Turning Red, being Toronto, Canada, with a Chinese-Canadian mother who suffers from this emptiness syndrome because her son moved on, realizing that most of this was an allegorical dream reconnecting with each other at the very end. Where overall, it was a very touching story that was better than the movie it was a part of that showed right after, and similar to the dynamic that Turning Red showed that was going for the mother-daughter relationship of Mei and Ming Li. And when you think about the messages and themes of the movie more and more, you realize how stupid Disney was for shafting this movie on Disney Plus rather than releasing Lightyear to theaters that very same year that it actually bombed. Like, it is very shameful that happened on their part of making a spin-off movie that has zero heart of the original character rather than a movie that deals with real family experiences grounded on Earth in such a unique style. Like, that really would have succeeded had it been the case if the movies were switched for such a type. But again, this doesn't mean it would have been a straight up guarantee, but it just would have put them in a much better picture rather than what happened to Disney as a whole back in 2023. That we need to understand that it is indeed a good film despite not appealing to all of us in the certain way it's trying to tell. That it's far from the best, but also far from its worst, where its cringe makes it stand out to what it truly wants to be better than its initial unrelatable reactions. When you take a look at the film in its early beginning, you get this picture of a girl who works hard enough to make her family proud, or more specifically in this case, her mother dedicated to care for their temple honoring their ancestor Sun Yi. It is a picture of the preteen experiences, with showing her best friends and interests living a life that I would deem cringy as hell on that side, and then coming home to the picture of the strict Asian parents who want a straight A, and of course being responsible with all that jazz. Where all of the tone that is being set up in the film is quite perfect to be honest, when I know people have grown up under such conditions from before, where it elevates itself written in the message of the red panda, the sides of life that we want to appease, whether it be our own or with others like our family. And then realizing how strict and overprotective Ming is as a mother really straightens both emotions either way for the younger and older generations depending on how each person sees the world at a certain age, whether it be from the moment we see the store clerk Devon from the girl's point of view, or her own mother's that makes it eternally embarrassing after she admits her own emotions for the boys other than that of Wartown. These two worlds connected between this one person is why her panda came out the same day after these events. Conflict that grows into one uncontrollable beast during a spectrum of certain emotions, validating ourselves or others around us. While yes, this can actually show to apply to having your first period, but also the broader nature of discovering who you are as a person. What do you want versus what do they want in the sacrifices that were given to you by these very stories of the immigrants moving to a better life. In some form, the panda is where you can see the good and bad in one person, trying to shelter it from your parents while also learning to embrace it for your friends. Love that can show in many different ways when you learn to love what you hate about yourself originally. Because anyone who discovers they can turn into a giant red panda would definitely freak out if they see themselves as is and the reactions of the world around them, where you feel like it's a curse because of what has been happening in your life, thinking that her ancestor made a mistake mistake, ruining it because she can't be who she is and now stuck in this very form. And how her mother goes to great lengths to protect her at all costs with this curse, knowing what happened to her own childhood. This causes her to do things that may seem a little too cartoonish on that side that fits within the movie style, but actually so real since people are really like that. Like again, I really think the movie is brilliant in showing this comically cartoonish side of things, where scenes like this might not make sense for various types of reasons, but how it is still grounded and based on those certain events that indeed happen in the creator's life. Like, yes, people are like that, and that is what we need to see. I also like to see it as diving into May's personal thoughts, the slow moments and highlighting things with a certain energy to them, and the brightness of the color of Toronto that you wouldn't expect real life to show is all done because it's meant to show through the eyes of a 13-year-old girl who's interested in a variety of things others like ourselves would definitely find cringy. That our moments of calm is when everything seems normal, but when emotions get unchecked, chaos truly gets unleashed, unfortunately at this point. All trying to bottle it up before the 25th, where they can seal it for good. But the best part of it all is the fact that her friends still remain supportive of her through any situation, sticking by her, singing her favorite Fort Town song despite the circumstances that surround them, thinking she'd be a beast but actually something more, that they take a liking to the side because it expresses who May is to them, what she really wants inside to be who she is made to be. This is the stuff that can break the mold of specifics, like it pertaining to one culture or group of people, because it is an expression of a person in a new form. Like we said about the period, that event can extend to any person of any type who relates to both friends and family doing what you want and doing what you have to, but of course just using Asian influences on this particular story, which does give it a big boost between two sides of a person, both Eastern and Western cultures mixed within one society, and learning how to live with both, to live for yourself, and how that applies to any other person even if their background does not fit that picture. Because that's what friends are really for in this scenario, coming from different backgrounds to no matter what, all of which who really love the panda side of May, and apparently everyone else who would do anything to hang out with her, and of course give them the opportunity to raise money when their parents said no to go to the concert, rejecting it because it still doesn't fit her worldview despite the circumstances that seemed positively in her favor. That this entire sequence is to show us the abilities of what she can do as a person who wants to achieve a certain desire or relative dream rather than what they should at the behest of their parents, who work hard every day to make their lives, well, livable at this point in time. Sacrifices that don't come cheap for certain reasons. And that's what the duty of her grandmother and her aunts come and try to do, which shows us the same cycle that happened each generation, judging by her own mom's reaction, and something we will see later on in the film. That what we see and what each person wants is to be better than our own selves. At least how I see it, and why some people can be hard to push because of the lack of love that some may have felt, or sealing the panda was the only way to show it after its initial usage, thousands of years ago at this point. But again, it's how to see the circumstances around them as the problem rather than themselves, blaming others because that's the easiest solution, not having the courage to hate what you love the most in your own family. And when you look back on most Pixar movies, they really do succeed the most in this particular realm, telling these modern stories that look back upon what people are really like and what they can do in a familial setting. One that doesn't have villains and honestly don't need to, because the heart is truly based on the regular everyday experience of a person, with the element enhanced to make a non-human creature infused with human emotions, or just turning humans into literal expressions of such nature. What I also really like about this is the character of Tyler, who does fit the mold of the boy who picks on the girls for liking certain things or acting certain ways that plays into the role of hating the cringy thing that the movie does, but then realizing himself is just hiding a part he doesn't want to show because he also likes May's panda side, where he also shows later interest in Fort Town. Things that people don't really like to show on the surface until others around them learn to accept them for who they are, opening up our new avenues because that's who we need to see. And I think that's a part that generally goes unnoticed since the focus is around the concept of this preteen girl doing preteen things that most of us outside of that life generally think is gross, but actually is how we really act. But unfortunately again, such actions leads her away from defending her friends, still desperate for the approval of her own mother. The heartbreak that can only decide one thing that should be present in our entire life. And speaking in terms of how we should be, is where I love what they did with May's dad. His character in the film is just more supportive of his daughter for who she is, and more of a proper balance for the family. Sure, some might say this might not fully relate to the actual experience, but for the film's sake, he does represent the true quality that a person could strive for. A simple, quiet man whose nature is to support his family the best that they could be, trusting in who they are, especially when he finds out the tape and discovers the wild side of May that generally actually made him laugh. It made him happy to see his own daughter happy, which is what any good parent would want. To see their child succeed in their own way is what the best that life could actually bring.
People have all kinds of sides to them, May. And some sides are messy. The point isn't to push the bad stuff away, it's to make room for it. Live with it.
And what I like about what he says after that is the fact that he says erase it if you want, which applies to both the video they took during school, but also the red panda inside of her. That we may have sides that can be considered bad by ourselves or others, but how that still is a part of ourselves and we should use it to be better. And prove to a fresh start in life you never thought you had before. So when the ritual happens, that divide starts to appear in our mind, taking the words of our dad to heart about what she did and the things she recorded on from before that are now placed in our mind as the difficult choice between stealing something for good or embracing it like Sun Yi did a long time ago to be who she was, choosing the path that allows her to live rather than survive under the validation of her family. The best part of this is how it awakens both sides in certain ways, wanting to keep what was found in both senses of how Mei and Ming's pandas are unleashed yet again, longing to be free or angry to have loss of respect, the control you had that could go too far. And that's why her panda is such a massive one for the likes of Godzilla, because it's supposed to represent that own desire, manifested from how her own mother treated her to be who she was, to be the perfect girl, but then unfortunately ending up the same way, which is something I relate to myself, and how I am different from my father or grandfather, but how we all still know I will end up having the same traits as I have aged, which is just how life is sometimes when we realize the fragility of this entire life. And again, when they are reunited, we do realize this is where she belongs with her friends at the concert, of people who they admire dearly. Seeing Tyler again, of course, there too to share within that love and also learning to embrace that side he was afraid to show all along, despite what had been shown from before. Of course, being happy until Mingzilla comes and invades the Sky Dome to try to get Mei Mei back. This is the final moment where Mei is able to admit that everything that she has done is all her own and that's who she is rather than what Ming wants her to be. Not the perfect daughter in any way, but the 13-year-old girl all in its basic essence, where there's nothing she could really do to stop it, despite her background trying to live up to a certain expectation. The fears of not living up to someone can really either hurt either way, where it can certainly lead to someone's demise had it not been the efforts of those who cared around her, that they all work together as pandas to save each other. That this is what the scene really encapsulates the most, being between cultural divides working together for that one goal so that one may live to see the best in each other rather than the worst of another, setting us back to the celestial plane to a younger version of Ming who lived with the guilt of not living up to her mother and unintentionally hurting her for not being perfect, to show us to Mei the cycle that has been happening from before that is being no different from anyone else, but one to learn that we shouldn't disallow others from choosing who they might fit their own interests, while also learning what our parents do is just for the best so we can live rather than ending up in the lowest paths of destruction, where at least we can see all of these generations together understanding that and apologizing for such actions and allowing to let someone see who they want to be in themselves. That desperation to make everyone happy but yourself is where you know things have gotten too far and need to take a step back to show us what you're made for. What the spirit of Sun Yi was glad to show Mei at the very end, and the beauty of what the panda can be, where what was once done for protection against armies is now embraced together with friends and family, where no matter how hard our differences might be, letting out a side that is dangerously wild if you think that way, we still love each other from beginning to end. So when we look back on the time that this movie was released and some of the reactions to the style of it all or certain events that take place on characters, we realize that this was the whole point. What was criticized and loved about it was a position of relatability to both generations for those who don't understand and for those who do understand. The cringy aspects of Turning Red are what truly make what this movie is trying to be about, what the underlying message truly mean from a certain perspective of life and why you can appreciate that. Which in that way, I can see why it still turned off a lot of people compared to Pixar's past, when people are able to connect with their messages more universally rather than something that doesn't feel like it fits their vibe, but still understanding how it's meant to be looked at, the choices that are inspired by other works of art, and so forth that does put you in the shoes of its main character more and the world around them. That it's okay to do this because it makes it unique and makes the story fulfill its very job. Where again, it's not the best Pixar film by any means, but certainly not the worst either, coming from the perspective of a boy like me who can't relate to most of what Mei goes through, but is certainly able to understand and respect that very side of life. Enough where I can call it A cringy masterpiece, because it is certainly cringe, but at least a good kind of cringe. No matter if we hate it or love it, it will certainly be remembered back upon for those very qualities, and I'm glad we can share the positives about it a few years after its release at the very least, even if I may not be the best person to talk about these types of things. So I'm all done. Goodbye.